Oh. Hi, Ryan.
Jack.
Oh, welcome. Welcome back again. Oh, man. This is it's the last episode of today. So it could either be the best or the worst. I don't know.
We'll let the fan decide.
I don't know. The fan. Okay. Movies. U.S. Navy in the movies.
Okay.
When we did what museum ships, like future museum ships and everything, we originally cited an article from Proceedings magazine about how museum ships are like a portion of Navy PR.
Yeah.
Which is a good political, like it's a tool. So it's, it talks about naval history, it helps with recruiting, all this stuff.
I still want to see a poll of active sailors to see how many of them visit museum ships before they join the Navy.
Oh, I would agree, but I also would think that number is very high.
Exactly.
But what I would love to see is a poll of those same sailors who thought that the berthing spaces in the museum ships are what was going to be on board modern ships, as the article likes to point out. Anyway, whatever. So, with that being said, I wanted to talk about another Navy PR tool. Movies, like actual, what people can go to see.
Man, if we polled sailors on how many of them watched a Navy movie before joining the Navy, that would be 100%.
And so with that being said, obviously we can point fingers to such blockbusters like Top Gun, which you hate. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with you.
It's not historically accurate
Why
enough.
are we friends? Not historically accurate. Okay, then you're not allowed to like any Navy movie.
The Final Countdown is good history.
Okay, Greyhound. You're allowed to like Greyhound.
Greyhound.
You're not allowed to like anything else. Should we roll the intro?
I'm not going to like it.
Do you want to do it again? Or we can do it together?
Together.
1, 2.
That wasn't historically accurate enough, that intro.
Yeah, no. The horn in the intro is from like a cruise ship. I couldn't even get a Navy ship.
Like the MiGs in Top Gun are actually American airplanes.
I know, just ridiculous.
They used the wrong aggressors at Top Gun school.
Do you want to, vent it out now so that we can get this out of the way.
I've talked about this online before. The actors do a fantastic job, and I'm blown away by, they put these actors in airplanes and put them through all these things, and they not only went through this, but they acted through it, and that's incredible. The movie is really well done. But, are you
talking about the first one or the second one?
The first one for sure. Have I seen the second one yet?
Because you say you don't like Top Gun 1 because of the American jets playing MiGs breaks the immersion for you or whatever. But have you seen the second one? Because you're really going to have a problem with some of these things.
I'm not sure that I have seen the second one.
Okay, well, no worries. So by the time, it hasn't come out yet, but by the time this episode comes out, it will.
The third Top Gun will have aired.
Yes, but true. We published a book called Lead Solo in the spring, in April. And now it's maybe August, September. I don't know.
And we're filming this in mid-March.
Yes. Which is written by Frank Weiser, who is the pilot that plays Maverick in the second Top Gun movie. So every time you see a camera looking over what you think is Tom Cruise's shoulder, right? It's his head with Tom Cruise's hairline glued onto his neck. And he's the one who's filming. The story is crazy. And so to what you just said, as far as the actors, and he talked about Tom Cruise. He's like, what a Chad, this dude comes in, all this energy, and he's like, and he's right up there with them. He's like, I'm a Blue Angel. I've trained my entire life. I've done this entire career. I'm used to flying these jets. I know that he has his own P-51, and I know that he is. But the fact that this dude can get into the second seat of my F-18 and not only survive these maneuvers that I'm doing, but then act and then recover instantly enough to then provide directions, because he's also directing. So he goes, when they're flying this. You haven't seen the movie, but maybe the ladies and gentlemen have. So he's telling the story when they're flying this canyon run in the desert.
Okay.
They're training for the mission that they're going to go on. In the movie, Maverick has to do this in like this tiny window of time.
Okay.
And so you're flying basically full afterburner through this narrow canyon. And you're going and basically wingtip to rock.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, we really flew that. Like, this isn't like Hollywood, like trick photography, stuff like that. He goes, I would come up and cut this corner, nearly taking the wing off my plane. And he would act and do the scene. And then we'd kind of level off. And I'd be like, so Tom, like, is that good enough? Like, holy Lord. And he goes, can you do it again, but get closer? And he's like, bro, like he goes, one of these times I'm going to get so close, it's going to take the wing off, and that's going to be the end of that, And so he's back there like grunting and doing all his stuff and doing the lines and then actually directing him as a Blue Angel and as a pilot. And, they'd land and then they do it again the next all day, every day for weeks on end. And so he was like, I really give Tom Cruise and all the other actors too, like Glenn Powell and everything, because the amount of physical stamina that you had to do to put up with that, because they were really in those planes doing that with real Navy pilots, and then especially Frank, who's a Blue Angel. And he talks about the scene at the end of the movie. Spoilers for those who haven't seen it. So they're over at the water off of, I think, was it either California? I forget if it was San Diego or whatever. They're over the water in the scene. And he has to pull basically straight up, and he's trying to evade a Russian Su-57, Russian's 5th generation, whatever. They only have like 20 of them, and they haven't shown themselves. And he's listening. They've done it so many times that he's listening to the voice lines that Tom is doing. So eventually, they've done the scene like 3 or 4 times now, and every time he's like trying to get him to do something different.
Okay.
And he's like, and he goes, "Hey Tom." Yes, Frank, are we dead? Because he doesn't know the end of the end of that scene, And he's like, do we die? Like, is that the moment we like finally get chased down? And Tom goes, I stop it, And so he goes to the premiere of the movie with his wife, and so they're flying, and she knows that he's the one flying this. Now, another thing too is every jet in the movie, except for when the Su-57 does the weird sort of like air brake maneuver that it does, is an F-18 CGI'd with a plane over top. So like the hyperjet thing in the beginning of the movie, every F-18, the F-14 at the end, like all these jets are F-18s that they've just CGI'd new bodies over. Believe it or not.
I didn't know that.
So anyway, so she knows that he's flying this last scene of the movie, and he goes, my wife grabs my hand, because he's like, they're about to die, and he goes, "Oh, it's okay, baby," and then the Glenn Powell comes through and shoots down the last Su-57. He's like, oh yeah, everything. So America, but
and I do have to say, my big issue with movies like this is I can't suspend disbelief.
Yeah.
Again, nothing but respect for the actors, the pilots.
Yeah.
I could suspend disbelief when we were in the cockpit with them. Mm-hmm. It's when they show the bigger picture and they say we're on Enterprise and it showed the aircraft carrier. I haven't watched this movie since I was a kid, but it was an Enterprise. When they're show the Russian MiG and it's a F-105 or something like that. Or A4. I can't even remember what it was. It's been so long. I was like, that's not a MiG. What the? And that's when I fell out of the disbelief and just couldn't. I'm
going to tell you one. So with CGI, obviously, like you can make Russian Su-57s or whatever. So like they don't have to be played by F-35s or whatever. So the new movie at least does away with your immersion breaking American MiGs. Okay.
Bad CGI still breaks my immersion.
No, the CGI is not bad.
Okay.
Like you really think he's flying an F-14. But there's a scene where so they come out of the canyon and he has to like fly basically on the ground to the target and then pull away. Mm-hmm. And so in the movie, the shot is this F-18 comes basically at ground level. Like they're like at head top level. So he's like, so imagine just the flattest open desert you've ever seen. And this group of guys and the camera is this tiny black speck that I'm supposed to pick out out of the horizon somehow, fly towards at 15 feet off the ground at full throttle, like as fast as this F-18 will go. Okay, I'll just do that. So he manages to actually do that, and actually, and the guy one of the guys on the ground takes a still picture. The second that he like hits their position, and they're all like hands in the air, and this F-18 is just suspended like a foot above them. Like I'm telling you, it is on like and so it blows by them. Of course, all the dust and the impact of the air like knocks all of them off. You know, it's absolute chaos on the ground for like 20 minutes as the dust clears, and they're like who's not dead? You know, and they're like, okay, and then they're like, did you get the shot? Yeah. So he's off. So he's like off circling back around, and the director is looking at the film. And he's off by like maybe a few inches off of like center. Yeah. And so he asked the Navy guy, he goes, hey, can you ask Frank to do it again? And the Navy guy looks at the film footage and he goes, you got the shot. like he goes, that is the best you'll have achieved. Like, do not ask Frank to do it again. You know? Like, no way that you're going to get better than what he just gave you. So anyway, it's just like a lot of fun, you know? But when you hear stories like that, the behind the scenes stuff, that really helps sort of bridge the gap. And especially when a Blue Angel talks about the production and his career and things like that. And then you get to be involved in a film like Top Gun.
And that certainly increases my appreciation. As a couple of kids of the 90s, obviously Top Gun had been out for
a couple years,
a decade before we got around to watching it. And so a lot of this information was out in the public domain. And so that really helps me appreciate it, even though I don't love it. I do appreciate what they did. And the fact that like Tom Cruise went to the Navy and was like, hey, I want to do a thing. And they're like, yeah, here's a squadron. Yeah. Here's an aircraft carrier to film on.
Well, according to Frank and according to Tom, he actually said, I want to fly an F-18. Like, he's like, I feel like confident enough to do some of these scenes on my own. And they were like, no. Yeah. And it wasn't like a no, like, you're not qualified to fly this plane. Because I think he probably could have proven himself. But they were like, this is a piece of government hardware. Like, you, like the
liability there.
If you crash this, then it's like, we have to answer to the taxpayers. But then, of course, that's a joke. I'm like, no, we don't. We crash our planes all the time. So we even shoot down our own planes.
Too soon.
Is that too soon? No one died. It's USS Gettysburg. No, sorry. Okay, we're done. I'm sorry. Okay.
Fewer casualties than the first Top Gun movie.
Yeah, talk about Navy PR. You know. So with that being said, does the Navy need to do more movies like Top Gun? So if we're not going to get museum ships, maybe a Navy, a modern Navy too, not just like. Calm down.
She's like, I'm ready. I want to act.
Yeah, I know. Easy, girl. Get down. Not like a battleship movie. Not another Midway remake, but like a more modern movie, like does the modern Navy, we're going to talk about old movies here in a minute, but just from a PR standpoint, what do you think?
I think that it's no coincidence that two of the times that the Navy was the biggest, World War II and the 1980s, were also two of the times that the Navy was the most active with Hollywood in supporting their films. And like we were saying a little bit ago, 100% of people who enlist in the Navy have almost certainly watched these movies.
So you need recruiting to fill halls, as we just that's just a base.
It's an all volunteer military
fact of life. Yeah.
How do you get people enticed to volunteer? And one of the ways is through propaganda. And the Navy's been consistently hitting shortfalls of their recruitment goals. One of the main reasons why they take battleships out of service is that it is so many bodies to fill. Want to go to the movies while we're on Liberty?
Yeah, totally. And maybe we'll get drunk, and and the MPs will come find us, and then we'll go steal a goat, and they'll be like, Mr. Roberts.
I'm throwing the palm tree all overboard.
So funny. You need a palm tree. You need a palm tree.
I've got room here for a palm tree.
Right. So, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite Navy movie?
Oh yeah, my all-time favorite movie.
Yeah.
The Final Countdown.
Okay.
So filmed in 1980. USS Nimitz is brand new.
Yeah.
Kirk Douglas goes to the Navy and says, "Hey, I want to make this movie," and they're like, "Here is our newest aircraft carrier,
right,
and its entire 100 aircraft air wing. Have fun." So there is the plot of the movie. The ship travels back in time into Pearl Harbor, gets into dogfights with Zeros.
Splash the Zeros.
But then there's also all the B-roll of all these great, the F-14s and the Crusaders and the Corsairs, all operating off of this thing. Really, really great stuff. And then the crux at the end of the movie, one of the sailors gets left behind in the past, founds the company that builds the key technology to build Nimitz. So not only are they showing off all this cool Navy stuff, but they're also saying that this ship is so technologically advanced that the only way to build it is if you already have built it and know how. So there's a huge propaganda piece to this movie as well.
Okay.
And this movie is not unlike Top Gun. It comes out a few years earlier, I think. It's the same aircraft. You're seeing F-14s dogfighting Zeros instead of dogfighting American airplanes. Hold on. They're AT-4 Texans, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they were fighting real Zeros there, buddy.
The problem is there are real MiGs. We shot down all the Zeros. There wasn't a real Zero to fly.
Where are you going to get real MiGs?
They went to the U.S. Navy and were given stuff. They couldn't try and go over to...
Bro. Okay. All right, so you like the splash the Zeros. And
the greatest line in cinematic history. Splash the Zeros.
Yeah, let's go. Why didn't they just, if they knew it was Pearl Harbor, why didn't they just go and strap some bombs to the old Tomcat and go sink some Kagi and
They did bombcat them all. They dressed them all up like bombcats and launched them at the end. Full alpha strike, the entire air wing.
Okay. So full disclosure, I actually haven't seen. I've seen the Splash the Zero scene. I have not seen this entire movie. You don't like Top Gun, so it's okay. We're gonna call this one a draw.
But I've seen Top Gun. Well, the first Top Gun.
Okay, but you don't like it.
But at least I've seen it.
Yeah. People only watch the first Top Gun for the volleyball scene.
I think I was too young to appreciate the volleyball scene when I first watched it.
Yeah, and then the volleyball scene in the second movie.
I saw the previews. That's legally distinct.
Okay.
They're playing football instead.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Football. Yeah, not volleyball. Yeah.
Val Kilmer doesn't do that.
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. Poor Val Kilmer. Yeah, but no, I actually have not seen Final Countdown all the way through. I've just seen the Splash the Zeros thing, seeing it on like the internet or something.
So it's really cool in that Kirk Douglas and...
But wait a minute, hold on a second. So they imply that they go after the Japanese fleet at the end of the movie, or no?
Well, now I don't know if I want to spoil it for you.
But see, that's immersion breaking, because then hypothetically, then the entirety of World War II doesn't happen, and then carrier development is stunted, because then you don't have like all the things that happen in World War II, and then ultimately then you don't get to Nimitz because and then that space-time continuum breaks, and then Nimitz then disappears in that timeline. Bro, doesn't make any sense. So see, just like your American MiGs.
Have you never heard of alternate universes?
Have you never heard of American MiGs? Alternate universes.
Didn't we get a MiG-25 right around that time period?
Probably. Okay, fine. Okay. We've and people ask me this. My favorite Navy movie is Greyhound.
Local control! Target will be fine on our starboard bow! Fire as they bear! Westbridge, all maps local control. Fire as they bear!
We've talked about Greyhound when we did the Destroyer episode.
If I had grown up watching Greyhound the way I grew up watching In Harm's Way and Final Countdown, those sorts of movies, I think it would be way higher on my list. But it is a fantastic movie, and certainly within my lifetime, I think no better Navy movie has ever been made.
Mm-hmm. It's just because I recently also rewatched Pearl Harbor.
The third best Pearl Harbor movie.
The Michael Bay 2001, whatever you want to call that.
So I'd say Tora Tora Tora.
Yeah.
In Harm's Way.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah. So Tora Tora Tora, fantastic. I always liked that movie. Yeah. In Harm's Way, of course, is good too. I know Rick loves that movie. But no, I recently rewatched Pearl Harbor. And then, of course, when in last fall, when we talked about, Rick did a video where we, because the end of that movie is the Doolittle raid.
Yeah,
and
the second best Doolittle raid on film.
And we used a clip of that movie and something they actually got right about Halsey, about that group missing its destroyers because they were left behind. So anyway, but yeah, that was interesting because that was 2001 where you had there were some scenes which were obviously early CGI. So one scene they would have CGI'd like a Yorktown class carrier, that was supposed to be Yorktown or supposed to be Enterprise or something like that, But it wasn't like a full shot; it was kind of like a glimpse.
Yeah.
And then you had full panning Michael Bay shots of a modern carrier. You know what I mean? Okay. And then in the Pearl Harbor scenes, they went to the trouble of building a full size Oklahoma bow to turn over. You know what I mean? So there's so many elements here where it's we tried with CGI, we're building this gigantic model to flip over, and then we're just gonna stick in these modern Navy. Oh yeah,
there's a scene where they blow up a bunch of sprue and immersion breaking.
Yeah, so for
even 11-year-old Ryan watching that is
it's very immersion breaking in that if you're gonna do something, even if it's not. Even if it's 2001 and it's not the best, just stick to it because, I'm going from something that looks like an Enterprise to then something that's a Nimitz surrounded by modern destroyers, and then we're kind of blowing up World War I ships or standard battleships like Oklahoma, and then when the nurses get to Pearl Harbor, that's clearly Missouri sitting there, but you're not going to zoom out enough for me to see Missouri. But I'm that's clearly this, And so to the point where it's I can't enjoy this, And in fact, for me, the most enjoyable scenes were then became the Battle of Britain stuff.
Lead high side. Go right at the lead bomber.
Calling you, Rich.
because it's like, yes, that's a Heinkel. Yes, that's a Messerschmitt. That's a Spitfire. You know, okay, cool, that checks out. Those are the Cliffs of Dover. You know?
Yeah.
And then so yeah, it was almost like the Pearl Harbor stuff. Just kind of too much of it was they were dancing around with too many elements, and you know.
I will say there's a scene, and I think she's Lexington, but one of the Essex-class carriers, a World War II built aircraft carrier, is depicted, I think, launching an aircraft or something. I do some filming on her. And I could appreciate that. It is the wrong ship, but Akagi isn't around to film on, or Hornet isn't around
and I
to
think
film on.
in Tora, like the
Yeah.
SS-class carriers filled in as American carriers, which, like, okay, you know, there's no computer CGI. It looks better.
Yeah.
A plane taking off a carrier looks better than like us filming a bunch of like bad models or something.
Yeah.
So like I can kind of get that.
I'm willing to have my immersion broken. You tried. You got a World War II carrier to launch a propeller plane. Like, that is incredible. Here, 60 years later, like, cool, good enough for me. You couldn't make it perfect with that technology. Yeah. Nowadays, the CGI looks too cartoony, or using a Nimitz-class carrier or an Iowa-class battleship.
See, what's interesting is, like, I only find issue with Hollywood CGI. Like, for some reason, Hollywood CGI seems to be going backwards. Like, all these movies with, like, their $300+ million budgets, all seemingly, the CGI has gotten worse. We went from, like, Pirates of the Caribbean now to, like you said, looking like a video game from 2008. And I don't understand why that's the case. Like, you have all this money, like, but then smaller budgets who are using, like, assets, like, from video games and, like, and that's in, like, Unreal Engine and stuff like that. Those actually, and then when cleaned up, that looks better than, you know, it's amazing to me how, like, some of these lower budget movies have, was it Godzilla -1 or whatever?
Yeah, Godzilla -1. What a fantastic...
Like, I was like, y'all did a better job at this than the last multi-billion-dollar, million-dollar Hollywood job, you know?
Yeah, so many of the Hollywood things, they try to, like, obscure the ships with, like, rapid camera movement or big explosions or things like that. And Godzilla -1...
This is a Takao Japanese heavy cruiser. And like, you could see that plain as day. Like, you're not half-assing this in some way. Like,
and they very much focus on her or the destroyers or whichever ships when they're doing their thing. And that makes them feel like a character in the movie instead of like a weird set piece. Or, like,
I still haven't seen Midway 2019, the 60s one, of course. But I have, at this point, I am so down this rabbit hole that I have refused to see that movie.
I did watch it out of a certain morbid curiosity.
Can't do it.
They focused on some of the right people this time around. Instead of made up characters like was it Robert Mitchum's character, they focused on Dick Best and some of those folks and told some stories that hadn't otherwise been told. But it was way too much CGI. And Midway, the original, this 1979 or whichever, was about Midway. The new Midway was Pearl Harbor. There was some Coral Sea, some Doolittle Raid.
That's my biggest issue.
And
with
a small part of Midway at the very end.
Well, that's the same goes with Pearl Harbor. 2001. I got to watch you do Battle of Britain. I got to go through this love story. Then you get to Pearl Harbor, and then I got to go through all this, and then I got to go on the Doolittle Raid, which is like ridiculous. You know,
these fighter pilots are now bomber pilots.
Oh my lord! Yeah, I know exactly. So anyway.
Where are the movies?
That's why I like Greyhound. No bullshit. Straight there. Done. Story. Good. Perfect. Done.
And part of why I love it is it's so much like those movies that our dads grew up on in the 70s, where Tora is the battle movie. They didn't take a romance novel like Pearl Harbor and turn it into a movie. They took Gordon Prang's At Dawn We Slept history novel and made a movie about that. And it just focuses on the battle, and you see it from both sides, the Japanese and the American side. And you see the lead up to it, stuff going on in DC, and then the battle itself in a very cinematic way, using all practical effects and models, and some World War II era ships that were still around at that time. And that just made it so good. And it's one of a ton of movies during that time period, like the Battle of the Bulge or Patton or...
Can't do Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, the tanks are wrong.
It's like, as a Kriegaboo, it's just like you made... the moment you paint Patton tanks like some shade of German, it's just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Like...
But those movies are still telling the story in the same way. It's taking... It's popular history. It's taking the history and it's making it a watchable movie, a story format. And like even during our generation, we get movies like Gettysburg and Black Hawk Down that still follow that exact same format. And then you don't. Any good war movies these days are experimental, like 1917 or Dunkirk, which I really didn't like, but is a well-reviewed movie because of its experimental nature.
I liked Dunkirk when I watched it in the movie theater, and I have not seen it since, because it's one of those movies where like the sound design was such a huge part of it, like the Stukas and everything. Like I knew that I had to see it in a movie theater, and I knew that once it was out of theaters, I'm like, okay, because I'm not going to be able to, I have a home stereo and everything, but I'm like, it's just not going to be the same. And the same goes for like Oppenheimer. Like that's a movie that I knew that I had to see in the movie theater, but like for me has absolutely no, like I have no interest in it.
There's no rewatchability to it.
Exactly. Like I'm good, you know? So yeah, there's certain movies that I think do really well in theaters, but then maybe not so much at home. I do think that, you know, the, obviously all those old movies in the 50s, 60s and 70s, I think really sort of, a lot of them obviously focus on World War II. You know, they're playing to that generation, that crowd. And I think that's great. Modern day World War II movies, like, so you have two examples. You have Midway from 2019, and that's when, and then Greyhound was supposed to be like, and then it was delayed a year because of COVID. So like in 2021, I think.
I would have loved to have seen that movie in the theaters.
I know. See, that's another one. That was like, I would love to have seen that movie in the theaters. And then COVID came, and then it was like, crap, you know. But like, there's an example of two modern World War II Navy movies that like are two different directions. And I just think that the Tom Hanks approach is just so much better. You know, it's like cut the BS, get the Navy stuff right, tell a compelling story, you know, that really hits home. That's all you need. Yeah,
the accuracy of it sells it in a way it allows us to suspend disbelief. And even though they took stuff that's probably from several different convoy actions and they compressed it all down to a much shorter time frame, like we do understand that.
Yeah.
To tell a story in a 2-hour Hollywood format, there are concessions that have to be made, and we'll live with it. But if you get everything else right, we'll still get behind it. And Tom Hanks has consistently done that with his war movies, even though by and large they're based on fictional events. It's still enough of the uniforms and the dialogue and the settings and stuff is accurate enough that we still get behind it fully.
And so coming back to the whole Navy or PR, military PR, but Navy PR, does a World War II movie nowadays do, like, what does that do? So we talked about like a movie like Top Gun 2, which came out like a couple years ago now, as far as modern military and like modern recruiting. But knowing that Greyhound was filmed on board Kidd, right? Does that really generate a lot of interest in Kidd, or like, so what does a World War II movie do in the modern age for Navy PR? Is it just hitting on that history aspect, or?
Yeah, I'm honestly not sure that it helps Navy recruiting nearly so much, filming on a historic vessel like that.
But does it help Kidd? Like, does it help? I mean, obviously the publicity, like during filming, but like, does it help? Like, okay, here's this World War II destroyer. Let me Google World War II destroyers. Like,
I think it does. Maybe not as much as people would hope. It's not like the film studio paid them hundreds of millions of dollars. And the artifact, the ship itself, is being endangered by having to be repainted and having film crews on board and
Set on fire.
Things like that happen. Or my coworkers or my peers who work over there have told stories about like they had to pull up lighting screens and things, and those were getting too close to the mast, which of course is 80 years old. So if they had to come into contact, that could have caused issues. So there really has to be some give and take between the film crew and the museum. But ultimately, the exposure is good for these museum ships. Mm-hmm. But going back to that old, the article, showing the weapons on Kidd, the berthing on Kidd, I'm not sure that helps with Navy recruiting as much because you're not showing what modern sailors are going through.
I don't think it does anything for the modern Navy.
And a movie like Battleship,
that makes the Navy look bad.
Exactly. The modern ships get blown up, and then they have to pull out this World War II ship that could still be in Navy service, but isn't.
But that movie just perpetuates this idea that these battleships like can just be fired up with a key in an afternoon by a bunch of old guys.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments below, but I want to come here with you and get some of these guys and film like a battleship, but in real life. Like, I want to redo some of these scenes from that movie where it's like, so in the scene, they say one thing, but then as you and the real people who work on the ship would be like, are you effing serious? like, how long do you think you need? Well, I need 6 hours and 8 old guys. How long do you think I need? Well, I need about 3 years and $500 million. End credits. The world gets destroyed.
That would work better as a TV show than a 2-hour movie, I think. We'll need a couple of seasons to get to the point where the ship is actually at sea again.
It's like The Office, you got one day, hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Still trying to get this boiler relined with fire brick.
Exactly. Have you scraped this rust off yet? Nah, can't be bothered. Having a bad day. So
I don't know where to find hydraulic fluid for the guns.
Oh yeah, go clean up your local Walmart garden section, Tractor Supply. But then, like a movie like Midway in 2019, does that do anything for Pearl Harbor? Like, do you think the story like of Pearl Harbor, like that whole thing, does that,
like, including the story of Pearl Harbor
just
in the
Pearl
Midway
Harbor
movie?
in general? Like the idea that anything having to do with Pearl Harbor, even if the movie itself has a bunch of flaws, do you think that helps like Pearl Harbor visitation? Because Rick in the notes for this episode left this idea that the Arizona Memorial took a survey, and overwhelmingly the number of people knew all their facts about Pearl Harbor from movies. Where it's like, so I guess my point is that if a movie like Midway gets produced and you have, or Pearl Harbor or In Harm's Way, whatever, how many Midways, Tora, like those are the stories that people are going to remember, and that's what people are going to take to Pearl Harbor, and then your colleagues, are like, now they got to spend all their time debunking like all these,
Watching things is still how we as a culture absorb the most information, whether we're watching the news rather than reading a newspaper, whether we're watching a movie rather than reading a history book.
Watching this instead of doing literally anything else.
Probably watching this or listening to this while they're doing something else.
Yeah.
We see you in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I do feel like once a generation, you have to retell these stories.
Yeah.
Because 2001 Pearl Harbor, nobody's going back and watching that. That's kind of forgettable.
It's on Hulu. That's a great Saturday night.
Tora.
That's also 3 hours.
It's a 3-hour movie.
It's on YouTube for free. Last time I checked, you go watch it. Click off of this.
My dad will go watch it. We grew up watching it. We'll go back and watch it. The Gen Zer today isn't going to get into Pearl Harbor by watching a 40-year-old movie. But if a new Pearl Harbor movie comes out, they might go to the theaters and see that or watch on a streaming service.
Does a Gen Zer watch the 2019 Pearl Harbor movie or Midway movie, like in general?
Well, certainly not all of them, but there's enough kids these days who are like us and are interested in this, who have dads who are like this.
I'm not trying to talk. I'm not trying to blanket an entire generation. I get it for sure. Fair. So does the Navy need to do more modern Navy movies that aren't like Godzilla and Pacific Rim and like, we got to fight aliens? Like, does the Navy need, now granted, if there's another Pacific War, like China, you better believe that there'll be decades where it'd be like in harm's way. Like, they'll just be, sad day at Zhangdong Pass. I don't know, but whatever the titles are going to be, but I can only imagine that there will be new content. But in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, by the end of that war, it'll then be called the South America Sea instead of the South China Sea. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
So it'll be battle in the South America Sea.
Brazil finally got into the fight?
No. The South China Sea. It's now the South America Sea because we're there now.
Like the Gulf of America?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm referencing.
Gotcha.
It's not funny if you make me explain it.
Sorry.
But in the meantime, I don't hate the idea of monster movies or alien movies rather than fighting a potential aggressor in a war that hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
We do have to see modern Navy ships doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I understand that we want this movie to do well in Japan, so we don't want to show Japan as the enemy.
Sure.
That we're going to fight in this movie.
You don't want to you don't want Hollywood actually causing real political problems.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly.
it's okay if the whole world unites against a bunch of Pacific Rim monsters or something, whatever.
Exactly. But the Navy has to contribute stuff to that movie, expertise, ships, sailors, to make it believable and authentic. And they have to do cool stuff.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
Getting blown up by the aliens in Battleship.
Was it in Transformers? I forget. Was it like the new USS Kid or?
Kill track 5205 the cut.
Target acquired. Killing track
2, 1, fire.
Which destroyer had the rail gun on it that was off somewhere, and then they rail gunned the transformer on top of the pyramid? I'm like, does that even mathematically line up? Where is this destroyer?
Yeah.
In the Mediterranean? What's the range on this?
Yeah, so there the Navy's doing cool stuff, but it's not authentic.
Yeah, right. It's just
because there's no Navy participation.
Yeah, it just feels kind of fake.
And it looked fake because it was a cartoon CGI.
Yeah. And so, and then knowing that you really can't put energy weapons on early bergs because they don't produce enough electricity.
Yeah, exactly.
You talk about power generation on battleships and such like that. See, so what you're saying is we can't like Navy movies because we know too much. We have to be ignorant, like the sheeple masses.
But if a movie comes out that does it all right,
yes,
like Greyhound,
yes, then
not only do your so-called sheeple who don't know everything fall in love with it,
fair,
but we do too.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's why when people ask me, I go, yeah, Greyhound's my favorite Navy movie. I love the fact that within 5 minutes you're already on the bridge. I don't have to care about this fake love story. I don't have to care about all this other fake BS. There's no drama. There's no 20-minute love scene. I don't have to watch Tom Hanks doing someone that is not Rita Wilson. I'm like, what? You know what I mean? It's just I don't care.
That man loves his wife.
Yeah,
damn it, my immersion if I don't see him with his wife.
Right. So, okay.
But even movies like Godzilla -1,
yeah,
Godzilla still beats up on the Japanese ships. But the ships and the Navy, the sailors, they're doing cool stuff. They're fighting back in a meaningful way.
And the story makes sense too.
Yeah.
The hypothetical situation. You're like, okay, I can kind of see that.
I can see an alternate reality where there's giant monsters and also they get to Cal, their last surviving heavy cruiser, fired up again to try and defend them against these monsters.
But not even fire. It doesn't even work fully. They kind of they spell that out. You know what I mean? Versus Battleship, where it's now I have a fully functioning Iowa class battleship. What? Because 6 old guys are here, and I'm manhandling a 16-inch shell down the hall. That doesn't make sense to me.
With the system that's designed to move that right there in frame.
Yeah.
there's a reason I have not watched that movie and will not watch that movie.
I've only seen the battleship part. I couldn't even tell you anything else.
Yeah.
So, you know. So
when are we going to get the
movie? Yeah. What?
the next Top Gun type movie? Or
Well, there is a Top Gun 3, I think. And you even said I think there's a Greyhound 2.
I've heard that they're they're writing one and they're trying to get it out there. I don't know how it's working its way through the funding thing. I have not been to the theaters since the pandemic. I don't.
No,
I can just watch everything on my home TV.
I haven't either, and and that's part of the problem too. I think movies as a whole, people just care less about, which I think is why, and I think that ends up hurting things because then you have stories that are told in multi-part TV series that end up just being too long. So you mentioned like having to tell the entire story of Greyhound in like 2 hours for Hollywood purposes, which, okay, it's a convoy. Like we don't need to nap. We don't have to like, no one has to show the nighttime like, or downtime. You can just, and that's that movie. Like it's just action from start to finish. So you're like all wired up after you watch it. But I desperately tried to like Masters of the Air. I got to like episode 6 out of 8 or 10 or whatever it was. And it was just, I couldn't do it anymore. It was just one, and Tom Hanks was a part of that production too, but it was just one bomber movie cliche after the next, you know, like, oh, pull up. Oh, I can't see the other bombers in the clouds. Oh, this. Oh, I'm puking in my mask. Oh, I'm doing this. And I'm like, I get it. And I understand that that's what like these guys did, but it just like, it was just one cliche after the next. Like it just bounced from thing to thing to thing. And then I was like, oh, and then you get to episode 6 when they all get shot down. And now it's like, now they're all like chilling in Luftstalag 3. And you're like, oh, great. Now we're doing The Great Escape. You know, let's just copy paste that movie. And I'm like, if I wanted to watch Great Escape, you know, I'll go watch Great Escape. You know, because Steve McQueen does a better job than you. Okay, and I can tell you that right now. So I had that series just went, the first couple episodes I was digging, you know, that it just went downhill, you know.
Now, see, I didn't hate that one.
Okay. I didn't say
it wasn't as good as Band of Brothers. Nothing will ever recapture
Band of Brothers.
What we had in Band of Brothers. It was so perfect.
Yeah.
But I did still like it. I
didn't say I hated Masters of the Air. It just some episodes were really good. Some it just lost me there at the end because I felt like if you had made like a Masters of the Air, but like as a 12 o'clock high remake, like an actual movie, like a 3-hour movie or something.
Yeah.
I feel like you could have done versus everything needing to be like a 10-part series on a streaming network. And now I have to invent bullshit to fill time, you know, and like all these extra drama scenes that don't really, you know, do much to actually move the main characters along. I don't know.
American culture is the 2-hour Hollywood movie. That is how we transmit culture, both in the country and to other nations that absorb our media. The pandemic impacting Hollywood, that we don't go to the movies anymore to watch these 2-hour things. And so things are becoming television shows instead.
And to justify that, you have to make a series versus a singular movie just so you can milk it for everything that you can.
So that is another thing that is impacting our culture. And maybe it's impacting something like the Navy's ability to support this, because the Navy can probably support, oh, you're going to make a 2-hour movie, you're going to have a couple of scenes on the ship, here's the ship for a week. Oh, you're making a series and you're going to come back every season?
Exactly.
Like, we cannot afford...
It's one thing to turn over a carrier because just flying out to a carrier is difficult. And then you got to get all your stuff out there, set up shop, be put into quarters, you know, and read into everything, because it's still a Navy vessel, and it's also, you know, technically classified. You know, you're not supposed to be going around like snapping pictures of water mains and stuff like that. You know, I keep bringing up the water mains, and you're just not going to receive that for a series. You're not going to come back season after season after season. That's going to get old. Like they're not going to. So I feel you. So the Navy is more likely to do just movies where you can control a camera crew for a certain period of time and then sort of release them back into the world.
Although someone in the comments might bring up the show The Last Ship.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that actually. Yeah.
Which I have seen, but I don't know how much Navy involvement was in that. Obviously, there's a lot of B-roll of
Sure.
Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. And that might be a really good example of, like, they're not fighting present-day rivals.
Exactly.
They're still fighting humans, so it's not this unbelievable out-of-left-field thing. But they're still doing cool things. The Navy sailors are the heroes.
Mm-hmm. And then before we sign off, what about Salem's portrayal as Graf Spee, where the Navy's like, we'll lend you this heavy cruiser, but you're not allowed to do anything to it. You're not going to. It's not like in Pearl Harbor where like you see some of Missouri, so that it's like that's obviously a battleship. But if I don't show you the hull number or the entire thing, you might suspend disbelief.
Yeah.
Unlike in Hunt for the Graf Spee or whatever, it's like here's a Salem, here's a hull number, here's an everything. You're not even allowed to fly a German flag, So just make up some backstory as to why this has a U.S. Navy hull number. It's so.
And she doesn't even look that much like Graf Spee.
No, not even remotely close. And so in that instance, again, is the Navy involvement in a movie like that to where like you probably could have done without.
I think it's detrimental both to the Navy and to Hollywood when they're using a ship like that just doesn't fit in any way.
I understand using the ship like close up to film scenes.
Yeah, it's easier than building a set. It's more realistic than building a set, too.
Right, but then you could have like done the zoomed out stuff with like a model in the way that like Sink the Bismarck and stuff was done.
Sink the Bismarck, Tora are both fantastic models.
I'm wondering why like a movie from the 50s, like they chose not to do it that way because I think it hurts the film, and especially because Ajax and Achilles played themselves.
They get some of the original
historical ships from that battle show up for this movie. Like you don't get that.
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense to bring the Royal Navy in and showing like the guys on the bridge going through the procedures. Like that's so fantastic.
Well, I think one of those ships had been sold to India or one of those countries, and actually so it had been passed on from the Royal Navy at that point, and then actually had been brought back in for that. But it's like so you have these two legit ships that were actually a part of this battle, and then you have Salem. So I feel like it's almost like you have these two polar opposites. You couldn't have met in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, and I get, okay, we got these real ships, so we need real ships over here. Now, if you have these real ships and then you're showing scenes of a model, a bigature being blown up, like I think that would have gone over better. Yeah. I'm glad that we have that footage of Salem in service.
Yeah, because that's interesting. Because now as like a historical, so forget the movie.
Yeah,
but you have now that sort of Hollywood-esque film of Salem that you can use for other purposes. Like I said, so screw the movie.
Like the best footage of Arizona we have is from Here Comes the Navy, which utterly forgettable story.
Sure,
doesn't even need to feature the Navy, but now we've got some of the only footage of Arizona.
Above water.
In service.
Arizona. Yeah, not forever. That's fair. So, so Navy needs, to bring it back to the whole point here, I would say that movies have a bigger impact in terms of recruiting and Navy image and PR and all this other kind of stuff, more so than museum ships. Jesus, again, I have to qualify everything. Obviously, museum ships play a big role, but I think in terms of like reaching the masses and that wider audience, I think movies do the best job at Navy PR.
They supplement each other. You're not going to convince somebody to be a sailor with one touch point.
Sure.
You need Grandpa to tell you his war stories.
Yeah.
You need that to compel you to go and watch a movie about it. You need that to engage you enough that you go and you visit one of these ships.
Sure.
And looking around at the living spaces on the ship compels you to go and talk to an active duty sailor, your big brother's friend or whatever, a recruiter. And then at that point, after you've had these multiple touch points, now you're starting to decide that this is going to be a big part of your life.
Yeah.
So I think that movies and museum ships both work well together in a system that is, one, perpetuating this maritime culture that we have as a nation, and two, promoting a life of service.
And that makes sense. And then when the two literally come together, like Greyhound, I guess, that has the benefit that can bring both together to the point where it benefits both, but that's to be seen. So I think that in that case, then I think the Navy needs to make more movies.
It's been too long since they participated in something like that. Well, we've got Top Gun 2, which I imagine they were pretty heavily involved in.
Well, no, but see, at the same, so the biggest problem I have with Top Gun 2 is, and this is maybe the immersion breaking thing, and this is like your American MiG. So the whole joke around Top Gun 2 is this unknown foreign aggressor, cough, Russia, has 5th generation fighters. Like, so do we, okay? Like, this is a joke. Like, and this is maybe why they're relying on sort of like people, because the average citizen, like if I walk up to some random person on the street, do you know what a 5th generation fighter is? No. Like, can you spell out the different generations of airplanes? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in a Hollywood production like Top Gun 2, the average Joe Blow might be like, 5th generation. I don't even know, like, do we have 3rd generation planes? Like, are we that far behind? Like, I need to call my congressman, Meanwhile, like, we've crashed more 5th generation F-35s than like every other country has built. Sorry. So, anywho, so the whole premise of the movie is like, you guys have to fly 4th generation F-18s up against the enemy's 5th generation fighters. So you guys need to be like Giga Chad pilots in order to accomplish that, because otherwise you're just gonna get shot down. Like, if you're anything less than full Chad, you're gonna get shot down.
Meanwhile, in actual war games, 4th generation aircraft beat 5th generation aircraft all the time. There's certainly a performance gap, but it's not impossible to overcome.
No, sure.
Yeah.
But like,
but
at the end of the movie, when you have an F-14,
which is also a 4th generation fighter.
Yeah, but it's kind of early. Anyway, that kind of straddles between 3 and 4, but whatever.
Yeah.
It is 4th by all means, but it's an early 4.
I would say that more modern aircraft like the F-18 Super Hornets are 4.5.
4.5.
They've got some of the same,
but also like F-14s are like pretty chunky, They're like, and so in terms of, they're kind of maneuver, like, so going back to Top Gun 1, where it's like the enemy MiGs are faster and lighter and more nimble and that kind of deal. So it's kind of the same thing. But the whole point of the whole story of Top Gun 2 doesn't make sense the moment you just raise your hand and go, why can't we use F-35s for this mission? And then you go, because the Navy didn't lend us F-35s for this movie. So we had to build this entire story around F-18s, which they did lend us. Oh, right. Okay. Because in the opening credits, when they redid the opening of the original Top Gun, they just put it on like George Washington or whatever. They recreated the opening Top Gun sequence with Danger Zone and stuff like that. They're launching F-35s. Like, F-35s are in that scene. You know what I mean? So it's like, and then even one of the pilots, like Bob, the little nerdy kid, he's like, he was a F-35 pilot, or at least so they say. So it's like, why can't we use F-35s for this effing mission? Why do we have to gimp ourselves? Because the Navy didn't lend us F-35s because they don't want cameras taking pictures of their airplane. You know what I mean? So it's like, so there's a moment where Hollywood, you create this completely bogus story because Navy said you can't have a 5th generation plane.
Instead, we could be talking about how we have the most technologically advanced thing in the world and showing how cool it is and getting people interested in being pilots.
So you could have, so right there, That's the exact point. So you could have shown a movie where you use the F-35 stealth and advanced weapon capability to infiltrate into enemy airspace, complete the thing, and get out and not die. Instead, the entire premise of the movie is you guys are going to fly these junky F-18s into ridiculously guarded airspace. You will all die, and it'll be a miracle if you don't. But you're the best, so you have to like Chad your way through like Sam's and all this. And it was so
Yeah, that doesn't sell me on becoming
right. So that's the whole point. So I'm like, do I want to become a naval aviator where I'm going to be given an F-18 to then just get shot down by advanced Russian 5th generation fighters? Yeah, I mean, as long as John Hamm sends me on the mission, I think we'll be okay. So there's your point, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the idea. I think if the Navy does movies that boost its image.
Yeah, so we need another Top Gun 1 or another Last Ship that isn't 5 seasons long so that I'll actually watch it until the end instead of just watching the first 1 or 2 seasons and then petering out.
Yeah. That's a good point about Top Gun 1 because it's like nothing in that movie is particularly remarkable. It's just like a typical Cold War-esque scenario. You know what I mean? There's no like ridiculous.
The end of the world if you don't shoot down these random MiGs over the Caribbean? Is that what
we're doing now?
I think that's what they were doing. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
They came into the Gulf of America.
Yeah. Well, and then so, of course, then Maverick, he shoots down, 2 or 3 in that movie. And then, of course, in this movie, he shoots down like another 2.
Oh, he's finally an ace?
And then so he gets back and it's like, Maverick's an ace now. Like, let's get naked in the shower.
It only took him 40 years.
I know. Congratulations. And that was another thing in our office, too, that was like immersion breaking. It's like, how are you not either out or an admiral? And then obviously they say that in the movie. Like, so in the movie, Ed Harris is like, dude, you shouldn't even be here. Like, you should be an admiral or a senator. Like, why you're still here dicking around at this level is unknown to me. So at least they acknowledge that fact. But it was just kind of a joke, too, where it's like the real Navy, up and out.
Yeah.
There's no room for 40-year-old captains, okay? Or 50 or 60 or
who are still flying fighter planes around.
Yeah. So.
No wonder they sent him on a suicide mission.
Yeah.
We need this billet back.
Yeah. You haven't seen the movie, but one last story before we end. So in the beginning of the movie, he's taking off like some Lockheed Skunk Works like hypersonic like aircraft that's going to do Mach 10 or something. And Ed Harris, is coming down to like shut him down or something like that. So he pulls up to the gate, which is this typical, gate guard box building style thing. And it's at the end of the runway. And he was told not to take off, but he does anyway. So, of course, the Frank is flying an F-18 that they've CGI this Skunk Works looking thing over the top. So they're like, you need to, buzz like the top of this thing. Like you're that close as he's taking off. So he's like, okay. So there's a telephone pole.
Okay.
So he's like, you got to do something about the stupid telephone pole, because I can't get that close.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, so they cut down the telephone pole. And then so he's like, okay, I can get close now. So he gets so close that the jet, the air hitting this entire thing, so it completely, in the scene, you see it. It's insane. The dust gets swept up, completely covers Ed Harris, his SUV. You see the actual blast lift the concrete, like the roof, off of this thing and slams it back down, and then the dust blacks out the camera. And so all the director saw was the thing come up
and then
down and then nothing.
No Ed Harris.
And then all of a sudden you saw on the behind the scenes footage, all of a sudden they're screaming, holy shit, we killed Ed Harris. Someone get Ed. Because they thought the whole thing collapsed on Ed. Like, holy Lord, as then they're like whooshing around and it's just like, no, okay, the thing's there, it's fine. It's just.
And that is what makes the Top Gun movies so good, even for someone like me who doesn't love them. Like, wow, I can appreciate that.
Yeah. So it's just funny because, like I said, there was this telephone pole and he couldn't get close enough and then he's like, cut down the effing pole, so they go out there with a chainsaw, hack down the pole, and then he's like, okay, I got it now. And then he got so close that it nearly like killed everyone. It was just funny. You know, I can imagine again taking an F-18 and just like going like within a couple feet of that. You know, it's just oh man, crazy. So anyway, well, Ryan, thank you very much.
We got to go watch the Final Countdown.
We gotta go watch Final Countdown or Death of Stalin.
We were talking about that, but now that you've said you haven't watched the Final Countdown, we might have to change our
We
plans.
might have to watch the actual naval movie. All right, well, thank you. I guess we should wrap this up. It's been a long day.
Until next month.
Until next month. All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
It's the final countdown.
The movie is 6 years older than the song.